Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Monday's edition of the dceu Daily. In July, I would have been doing this gig for 4 years. In those 4 years, I've lost both of my parents. When I started this channel, both of my parents were fighting fit and alive, and they were living here with me in this beautiful mansion. I've suffered many tragedies in my life, and I've never brought those tragedies, apart from a small reference, on this channel and my other social media. And that's right, you don't care about my problems and my personal life. You want to know what I think about my beloved Manchester United, my beloved Doctor Who, and my beloved DC Extended Universe. I love DC with a passion. My knowledge isn't the comic books now, that's the source material. I respect it, and I respect the people who believe in that source material, but that's not where my knowledge is. I don't have the concentration to read books, so it's important if you're coming newly into this channel, and please subscribe, like, and tell the world about me, that you understand where I'm coming from. The first movie I ever saw was Superman the movie. That made me fall in love with Superman, and I've been in love with that character from this day. In fact, I was watching Superman the movie and marveling at its achievement. A 70s movie without any computer-generated images. So I'm a big fan of what Zack Snyder has done with the DCEU. He uses CGI like a paintbrush. His movies are exquisite and beautiful. But if you tasked me to be in control of setting up a DC franchise, a live-action franchise, to kind of compete with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Zack Snyder would be the last creatives I'd ever bring on to a franchise like this. And the same with Christopher Nolan. Their sensibilities don't work in making silly mainstream movies that make nearly $1 billion a picture. Yes, we can argue that the first 4 or 5 DCEU movies made more money than the first 3 or 4 standalone Marvel movies. It simply doesn't matter. And we'll never know if Snyder's original take on Justice League, the Snyder Cut, or something a bit shorter, if it was just allowed to be released like Feig's first Avengers Assemble, if they just allowed it to be released, we don't know if the world would have said like they did with the first Avengers, wow, this is amazing. And then everything after that would be so popular. We'll never know. There's a chance, there's a 50-50 chance either people would have embraced it or kind of treated Snyder like they treated him, with the other movies. Batman vs. Superman was the movie that broke everything, and I love that movie. But if you want a successful mainstream franchise, that's not the direction you go in. Because Snyder ends up having to explain what he's trying to do constantly on Vero. And, I want to show me. Don't tell me, show me. But I respect Snyder and what he's achieved. But at the end of the day, he's not the direction I would have gone in. So in these 4 years that I've been covering the DCEU, we have seen false dawns. We have seen great times. I have supported the fight to release the Snyder Cut. And we did get the Snyder Cut released. What a great day that announcement was. And we're still fighting to release the Air Cut. Successfully getting a director's vision to be released is something very special. Because if you take the first Avengers film and the Snyder Cut both to the Cannes Film Festival, a festival that I've been to, a great experience if you like fantasy, escapism, art, anything. I'm a big fan of all of those things. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut that gets the standing ovation, not Kevin Feige's and Joss Whedon's Avengers, because the MCU wasn't made for critical acclaim. It was made to make money. It was made the same reason as George Lucas made the first Star Wars film, or the first Indiana Jones film, or, why Robert Zemeckis made a Back to the Future movie. They're not supposed to be fucking deep. They're supposed to just basically give you that adrenaline rush, and that you come out the cinema smiling. It's like what everyone did when they first saw Superman the movie. That's what those movies are supposed to do. And you know, there's lots of kind of different things we can discuss about this situation, but the reason, right, that the DCEU isn't fit for purpose right now is that Snyder wasn't the man to create a successful mainstream universe, but he's a wonderful author, a wonderful man. I watch his DCEU movies all the time. So he wasn't the right fit for what they wanted. So then they had to remove him because they didn't feel they were going to get to a place they needed to. But instead of letting him finish what he was doing, they kind of, you know, it's like, imagine you're going to the toilet, right? And, you know, you're still going, and someone's trying to bang the door. Zip up, mate. I want to go. I'm desperate, but I'm still going. I can't zip up. If I put it away now, I'm going to be wet, man. I know this is crude, but this is what they did to the DCEU. So Justice League is like that guy putting it back in, you know, in its trousers when it still needs to go. That's the problem. And sorry for the crudity of my, you know, my explanation. But that's what it is. So then you're kind of digging yourself, trying to dig yourself out of a hole by trying to dig yourself a hole. Justice League is such a big hole. And then you've got this situation where they try and create this Hamadaverse with Walter Hamada coming in from New Line Cinema, a company that WB already owned because he was successful with a horror universe. Well, excuse me, a middling, mediocre, semi kind of successful horror universe isn't the same as a comic book universe. And the problem is, we're not the first ones attempting this. Feig's done it successfully. When Feig started doing it with Iron Man, nobody was fucking watching apart from a bunch of obsessed Marvel fans. They didn't like what he was doing at first, but ultimately, we saw what he was planning come to fruition via the first Avengers. And Snyder should have at least been allowed to deliver us his cut of the Justice League movie, and then who knows what would have happened after that. Ultimately, we'll never know. The Snyderverse portion of the DCEU is about interference from a studio that was getting kind of pressure from outside sources. In a way, you can understand that, but if they just kept their nerve, who knows what we would have been, where we would have been right now. So you've got this Hamadaverse. Again, who is interested now in these movies coming out? Who's interested in Black Adam? Who's interested in Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and if it's even ever released, the Flash movie? Who's interested in that? Apart from a bunch of DC fan people. Not many people. Not the mainstream audience. There is no brand recognition or loyalty with this franchise because what happens is, have you ever heard of the story of Billy Liar? Billy Liar, I think it's Billy Liar anyway. That's another story. Same kind of moral though. You've got the boy who cried wolf. So he kept on crying that there was a wolf, but he was lying for attention. So eventually he did see a wolf. Everyone said, fuck this, I'm not getting out of bed for this brat. And the wolf kills him. This is what happened to the DCEU after they got rid of Snyder. Nobody believed in the franchise. Ask yourself this question. The Justice League marketing was really good. We saw lots of great sequences, great trailers, great promotional material, but why didn't people go and see it in its opening? The interesting thing with Justice League opposed to Batman vs. Superman, Batman vs. Superman had one of the biggest openings of all time, but then had one of the hugest drop-offs, which means there was interest in Batman and Superman. So Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada's protestations that nobody's interested in Superman is wrong, because that film had one of the hugest openings of all time because people are interested in those characters together. But when the mainstream audience saw the movie, they didn't want to see it again. It wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't what they were promised within the marketing. But with Justice League, people actually saw great marketing but didn't go and see that movie. Why weren't they interested? Well, first of all, they saw there was an issue. And they weren't confident about the movie. Batman vs. Superman caused the mainstream to doubt the DC Extended Universe even before they saw Justice League. Now, you and me went to see it. It only made altogether 650, that's all it ever made. Who knows what its opening was? It was probably a very terrible opening. I was shocked by its opening. I was shocked that people didn't rush to see a Justice League movie. So why did people rush to see an Avengers movie and not a Justice League movie? Because Feige got it right. He built it up. The mainstream audience, as well as Marvel fans, were interested and excited. The mainstream audience weren't excited. That tells me, even if Justice League wasn't a thing, because people didn't know about Justice League, right, before they saw the movie, but still there wasn't that brand loyalty to go and see it after those, 4 or 5 DCEU movies. The Great Wonder Woman movie wasn't enough to change people's minds, the mainstream audience. That says something. So that film, that proves that it doesn't matter whether it was Zack Snyder's Justice League or Justice League, people initially wouldn't have run to see that movie because they had no confidence in the DC Extended Universe after BVS. Again, I'll repeat it to the pie eaters at the back. Love the movie, love Zack Snyder, but we're talking about marketing here. We're talking about consumer confidence and brand loyalty. And Batman vs. Superman put the mainstream audience off. That's interesting because Iron Man 2 is a really bad movie and a dull movie and not as good as the first one, but people stuck with it because basically by that point everyone loved Tony Stark by Robert Downey Jr. and it doesn't matter that it was a bit underwhelming. People came back for more with the other movies. Incredible Hulk didn't make a great deal of money, but it has got some fans. But people still kept on coming back. They came back for Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger. These were films that were being constantly criticised. And, from Marvel fans. But as we got to Avengers Assemble, there was a big audience. People loved that movie. And that's what took the whole franchise off. But without building it up with those middling solo movies, they wouldn't have got there. But by the time we get to Justice League, no matter if it's Zack's movie or Joss's movie, the same people would have came in. So it doesn't matter who was making that movie in the end. People hadn't seen it. As I said, at the opening weekend, people didn't know what movie it was going to be. As I say, the marketing looked fantastic. We didn't know what piece of shit it was going to be until we saw it. But people didn't trust the franchise by that point. That's interesting. That's why I talk about in covering this franchise for, nearly 4 years, 4 years in July, I've seen, as I say, false dawns. Because Man of Steel for me is a great movie. BVS is a great movie, but the divisive nature of the movie destroyed any consumer confidence. Again, the first Suicide Squad movie, which isn't David Ayer's movie, is a calamity. That situation is because of Batman vs. Superman. Critics hated it. People hated it, but it still nearly made 800 million. Amazing. Wonder Woman is literally the perfect comic book movie. And then we get to Justice League. So 2 back-to-back. So basically, we have Wonder Woman that's great, but then we have the first Suicide Squad movie that's interfered with, and then you get a Justice League movie that's interfered with. But whatever that movie was going to be, people had lost faith in this universe by that point and were never going to support it. But I suppose even the little amount of people who would have gone to see Zack's movie, once they saw it, maybe the second week would have been stronger. I don't know. So this franchise was always in trouble. You've got, and there's so many sides to this fandom now. You've got my fellow Snyderverse stands who really want to restore the Snyderverse. I will say this. There's more money to be made in the Snyderverse than there is in the Hamadaverse. The Hamadaverse isn't fit for purpose. And that takes me to my next point. I've heard rumours that David Zaslav and Matt Reeves have been having very, very long closed meetings between them. No PAs, no Zoom, personal meetings. I'm hearing the rumours that David Zaslav may want to abolish the defunct DCEU because the DCEU isn't going to go forward. Whether they release these 5 movies or not, and watch this space to find out what happens there, because it's a mess. I think Zaslav is considering, not definitely, but at least considering the possibility of having a DC live-action universe coming from Matt's The Batman universe, or even getting him to develop another universe for DC. I think those discussions are happening. And of course, it's very interesting. But as I say, that's what I mean about false dawns. We've had so many false dawns, and it doesn't end well. You know, Wonder Woman, that's good. We're going to go forward now. No, Justice League, you know. Aquaman, that's a great movie. Walter Hamada's in charge now. AT&T are in charge now. It's going to be great. Shazam's okay, but makes less money. Wonder Woman 84, Birds of Prey. We're going backwards again. And then we get James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Certainly not my favourite movie of the entire franchise, but it's a very well-made, entertaining movie, at the very least. And then we get the next chapter of that from James Gunn in Peacemaker, which is also very entertaining and great, but not the best thing ever in the franchise in DC live action. As I've said many a times, we have got so many pieces of DC live action content, you know, to be proud of, going back to the brilliant Superman the movie and Superman 2 and Batman 89 and Batman Returns, and what Snyder did and what Nolan did, and what Todd Phillips did with Joker. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff out there. But even like a film like Superman 4, which you can tell within the picture and the quality of the movie, the budget was withdrawn and Christopher Reeve was hugely betrayed there. But you still got Christopher Reeve doing his thing. When he's talking to the UN, he breaks your heart and he makes you cry. Christopher Reeve proves he's a great Superman by being in a shit movie, and when he's on screen, that movie still works. Take a think about that. That's what makes a great version of an iconic character. Now, before I go, in the next 5 minutes, I want to discuss Richard Donner. Because without Richard Donner, there wouldn't be a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Forget the fact that he inspired all these modern-day creatives to do what they did. You know, he inspired Bryan Singer with X-Men and X-Men 2. And Superman Returns. Superman Returns was supposed to be a continuation of the Donnerverse. It didn't work out, unfortunately. Yes, I say unfortunately. But that's not the only reason. Basically, superheroes wouldn't be a thing now if it wasn't for Richard Donner. But Kevin Feige and Jeff Johns were literally apprentices under Richard Donner. He trained them. Who do you think trained Feige to do what he did with the MCU? You see, you may not know this, but director Richard Donner actually made his own Superman 2, nearly completed it, but then he was fired because he fell out with the Salkinds, the people who were literally funding the Superman 2 movie and who funded Superman the movie. They disagreed about many things. In the end, they sacked him. Now he and Tom Mankiewicz, the person who literally rewrote every syllable of Superman the movie, had another 4 or 5 movies planned. They had a Supergirl movie planned. I'm planning to do a documentary about their plans for a DC Extended Universe. In fact, if the Salkinds didn't sack Richard Donner, we would have had a DC Extended Universe way before the MCU was even thought of. Imagine in the place DC would be now. And maybe because of Richard Donner's connection with Kevin Feige, when Richard Donner got too old, Kevin Feige could have taken over. Think about that for a minute as well. It could have been amazing. Imagine if you're Elias Salkind now, the producer of Superman the movie, Superman 2, Superman 3, Supergirl, and the Superboy television series. He could have literally owned DC if he only had faith in Richard Donner. He wanted to spend a lot of money to make these things great, but look at the money they could have made. And because of shallow thinking, they failed. DC always seems to fail because there's some kind of suit that doesn't have the guts to go forward with an ambitious take, and that's a tragedy. So now we are where we are. We've had the AT&T era, we've had the Hamadaverse, and now Zaslav comes in his white horse. Is he another silver tongue, or is he the real deal? Only time will tell. This has been the DCEU Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I will see you in the next video. Until we see each other again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.